Hey, welcome to Dad Describes, where we take on the decline in culture one day at a time in an effort to strengthen family, faith, morals, values, and having reasonable discourses with people we might disagree with, and that's okay. So, with the 2020 election over and some uncertainty related to upcoming litigation in the courts, I've been sitting back and taking stock of what actually occurred on election night and, being thoughtful about it. It appears that Trump has not been successful in knocking Joe Biden out of the race. However, the Republicans didn't come away empty handed from election night. A number of state legislatures flipped to the Republicans. They made strong gains in the U.S. House, shocking everyone, took control of an additional state governor slot, and may yet retain the Senate in an upcoming January runoff in Georgia. Listen, 2020 is a census year. Those legislature victories at the state level, they are going to be redrawing districts in a way that are going to favor Republicans and protect Republican seats in the future. Those are big wins. Those are strong gains. And Democrats are, frankly, not really thrilled about what election night has brought them. Here we have a story by CBS News. Democrats devastated and reflective after House GOP exceeds expectations, as by Aaron Navarro. House Republicans exceeded Election Day expectations, knocking off at least five targeted incumbent Democrats in 2020, while Democrats will maintain a slimmer majority in the House. CBS News projects Democrats are likely to lose several more races, including two in Florida. We have definitely seen a record number of the Hispanic community come out and vote for Republicans. Both parties anticipated that the political environment going into Tuesday's election would expand the House Democrats' majority and predicted gains ranging from 5 to 18 seats. But from Miami to New Mexico to Des Moines, Republican congressional candidates outperformed polls and pundits that predicted another blue wave that would keep even the most vulnerable House Democrats afloat. And as we talked about, it didn't happen. They go on to say, we lost members who shouldn't have lost, Virginia Democrat Abigail Spanberger said on a Thursday call with the Democratic caucus. Tuesday, from a congressional standpoint, was a failure. I think some of this actually comes down to the socialist agenda that the left is pushing. You can't have a party run on defund the police. It doesn't work. Over at Fox News, Joe Scarborough calls the election an absolute repudiation of the Democratic brand, despite likely Biden win. Listen, I'm not going to read the whole article. We'll skim through it. I've got to put a sidebar in here because after the dust settles, if Joe Biden ends up winning the presidency, then I think a lot of people are going to turn to what happened to the Democratic Party. The Morning Joe co-host began. There is no way to put this other than to say Joe Biden winning looks like a one-off. This election, for the most part, was an absolute repudiation of the Democratic Party as a brand. Their brand doesn't work across most of America. It just doesn't. Scarborough went on. They got routed in the Senate races. They should have won. And I mean, if you don't believe me, just look back at all those predictions. Are Democrats going to win 9, 10, 11 seats? The House results are perhaps even more shocking. Nobody thought this was going to be close. The weekend before the election, Republican pollsters were talking about hemorrhaging support in the suburbs and couldn't believe the numbers. They said we're going to get destroyed. Well, it ended up that they couldn't believe the numbers for a good reason. The numbers were wrong. And here we get into that Rep. Abigail Spanberger from Democrat of Virginia, who spoke bluntly to her House colleagues during a Thursday conference call, warning party members about further losses in 2022 if they don't curb their rhetoric on socialism and defund the police. Here's another article I love by The Advocate. I'm not familiar with them. They're pulling their sources, it looks like, from the New York Times, but they're not friends to Donald Trump, at least, scanning through this. LGBT support for Trump doubled since 2016, early exit polls show. Early exit polls, called from the New York Times, show LGBT support for President Donald Trump doubled since his matchup with Hillary Clinton, when he only managed to capture 14% of the demographic. The Times, querying 15,590 people at polling places, early voting sites via phone calls, found that 28% of self-identified LGBT people supported Trump, while 61% went for Joe Biden. That's amazing. If you look at the turnout in minority votes, Hispanic, Black, LGBT, I'm actually surprised at this. But then maybe I shouldn't be. I mean, if you look, Trump was for same-sex marriage before he was ever even in politics. Even when Obama first got into office, he came in against supporting same-sex marriage. So yeah, we know the election saw more minority voters vote Republican than we've seen in our lifetime. Trump / the GOP expanded the tent. He got a ton of votes from non-GOP voters, and if the GOP Republicans are smart, they'll figure these groups out and expand their outreach to those communities in some fashion going forward. Trump reached out to these groups. While I would say for the most part, the GOP has kind of been terrible at it. These subsets of American culture, which we're all part of in some way, are not monolithic. There are hearts and minds to be won. Yes, there are some that won't have a conversation. They have hard hearts. They don't want to talk. They know what they know, and come heck or high water, this is where they'll stand. Although some will not even tell you what they believe. It's just kind of a brick wall. I asked a family member recently, hey, did so-and-so vote? They were like, I have no idea. They don't like to talk about that stuff. It's taboo. You know, and I get that. There's some wisdom in not talking religion or politics. Relationships can break down over it. But I will say this, if you're breaking off a friendship or a relationship or cutting off a family member because of how they voted, you're likely the problem in that scenario. Don't be dumb like that. If you think you're so right that you have to hurt someone like that, it's a little mean. All you're going to communicate to that person is that you, in fact, hate them. Don't do that to someone, and don't do it to yourself. It'll come back to bite you in the butt. And the big but in this election is the setup for 2022 and 2024. Biden, if he manages to completely win this, get elected, he is old and frail, and he's going to get a ton of pressure to pursue hard left socialist policies. He's either going to be replaced by an unpopular Harris because of his age or frailty, or he will somehow manage to wheel himself into a 2024 election looking even older and more confused than he was in 2020. His main advantage in 2020 was that so many people just hated Trump with everything that they were, to the point of like it almost being a mental condition. Biden is not going to have that working in his favor. And if it's Harris running, she's not that popular. Go back and look at the percentage of how much support she actually got in the primaries. Not much. So yeah, I think that Trump losing is a blow, obviously, to Trump and to the GOP, but it does set up very nicely for the next two election cycles for the right. assuming, of course, we can avoid a civil war. So if you like this kind of commentary, feel free to join me by hitting the subscribe button. I do put out regular content, and, thanks for hanging out.